A single slap on a crowded Seoul street has shaken an empire. What began as an act of kindness spiraled into a scandal that now threatens the heir of Samsung, his fragile marriage, and the woman who never asked to be saved. But behind the headlines lies a deeper fracture between pride and truth, loyalty and dignity. With billions at stake and the world watching, one question echoes louder than the scandal itself. Will Jinwoo protect his wife's pride or risk everything to defend Amar's honor? The story is only beginning, and once it unravels, no one will walk away untouched. Welcome to the Judge Stories. If you enjoy gripping tales with shocking twists, please subscribe to help us grow. And tell us in the comments which country you're watching from. Seoul pulsed with its evening rhythm. A city that refused to blink. Neon washed the crosswalks in electric color. Danshi buses rumbled past like patient beasts, and the sweet smoke of chestnuts curled through the autumn air. In a sleek black limousine, Jinwoo Park scrolled through board notes while his driver threaded the car through traffic. The limo's cabin was a cocoon of leather and quiet, until a scream tore through the noise and a horn split the night. The driver stamped the brakes. Headlights flared across a figure stranded mid-crossing, frozen, one hand lifted as if to stop the entire road. Jinwoo didn't think. He shoved the door open and ran. The world narrowed to a spray of light and the howl of a taxi skidding. A young woman stood locked in place, her scarf loose, eyes wide with the helpless stillness of someone who'd run out of ways to run. Jinwoo lunged, an arm around her waist, yanking her free. They tumbled together, asphalt scraping palms, the air sharp with burnt rubber. She sat up with a wince. Her blouse was torn, jeans frayed at both knees, sandals kept alive by stubborn straps. Yet nothing about her begged. Her spine stayed straight, her gaze defiant, the curve of her cheekbones, the depth of her skin, the music in her vowels when she breathed out, African unmistakably. "Are you all right?" Jinwoo asked in Korean, then shifted to English when her confusion met his words. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice shook and her left hand guarded her ribs. "Not fine at all." A shallow cut traced her forearm, blood welled in a bright line. Jinwoo shrugged off his jacket and settled it around her shoulders. She flinched, then softened into the warmth, eyes flicking up to read his face. "You're bleeding," he said gently. "You need a doctor." "I don't have money for hospital," she murmured, trying to stand without help. Pride steadied her more than strength. Jinwoo let out a small breath that might have been a laugh. "Do I look like the kind of man who leaves someone on the street over a bill?" He nodded toward the limousine, where his driver hovered, stunned. "Please, you're safe." Around them, the curious murmured, "Isn't that the Samsung son?" But the crowd thinned when they saw the woman rise, steady on the man's arm. Jinwoo guided her to the car. In the limo's spacious rear cabin, she perched awkwardly, a sparrow in a jewel box, clutching his jacket as if it were permission to breathe. At the hospital, paperwork moved fast when a familiar surname filled the lines. Nurses whisked her behind a curtain. Jinwoo stayed in the corridor, hands in his pockets, pretending patience while his foot tapped out a restless metronome. A memory pressed in without asking. 8 years old on a kitchen stool, the house's African nanny laughing as she stirred a pot. Peanuts and tomato, garlic singing in hot oil. "Food is a story you can eat," she told him, handing over a wooden spoon like a knight's sword. Now, the curtain rasped. A doctor stepped out, efficient and kind. Bruises, a shallow cut, fatigue, no broken bones. "She needs rest," he said, "and meals that aren't skipped." Jinwoo nodded, relief loosening, something he hadn't known was clenched. He washed his hands, then slipped into the room. She sat propped up in a plain hospital gown, the harsh lights making maps of shadow and light across strong cheekbones. Without dirt and panic blurring the view, he noticed the steadiness in her eyes, pain and fight sharing the same space. "Thank you," she said, gathering the gown at her throat. "You didn't have to." "My mother would disagree," Jinwoo replied, a wry smile lifting one corner of his mouth. Her rule was simple. If you can help, you must. "I'm obedient on that point. The corners of her lips moved, almost a smile. I am Amara, she said, voice calmer now, the name a soft drumbeat. Amara, he repeated, tasting the syllables. Rest tonight. I'll come back tomorrow. She blinked, startled. Why? Because you nearly auditioned for a headline, he said lightly. Someone should make sure you're still breathing and complaining in the morning. A small sound escaped her then, half laugh, half gasp, the sound of someone who hadn't used laughter in a while and found it still working. For a moment the room felt warmer than its fluorescent bulbs allowed. He left her with fruit on the bedside table. Apples, bananas, an orange bright as a sunrise, and a quiet promise he hadn't meant to make until he heard himself make it. In the corridor, his driver fell into step without a word. The night air snapped clean against Jinwoo's face as they walked to the car. Naur, Seoul shimmered. Tail lights stitched the river with red thread. High-rises floated in glass reflections. The limousine slipped back into traffic, and Jinwoo stared at his hands, surprised to see a tremor he would deny. Something had shifted. Nothing romantic he could name, just the human gravity of a stranger who refused to be small. Nah. Across the city, a convenience store TV played the late news. A shaky phone clip, nothing more than a blur of black car and a man helping a woman through automatic doors, looped without context. A caption writer, bored and speculative, typed a harmless line, "Business air assists unknown woman." It would mean nothing tonight. In the Park mansion, glass and marble waited like held breath. Jinwoo would walk into that quiet and turn its silences into conversation. For now, he let the city wash past and listened to the sentence that had followed him since childhood, the one that sounded like a wooden spoon tapping a pot. If you can help, then you must. Tomorrow, he would return. The Park mansion stood like a lantern above Gangnam, walls of glass catching the city's shimmer and throwing it back. By the time Jinwoo stepped out of the elevator, Seoul was a field of light beneath him, headlights threading the Han like restless fireflies. A housekeeper padded past with a tray so delicate the porcelain seemed to whisper. At the window, Hee-jin waited. Silk wrapped her frame in pale folds, her hair smooth, every line precise. In the glass, her reflection doubled, one calm, one watchful. She didn't turn when the elevator's side shut, but Jinwoo saw her chin lift slightly, the signal she'd heard his car from blocks away. "You're late," she said, voice wrapped in courtesy. "There was an accident," Jinwoo replied, setting his tablet on the console. "Not mine. A woman nearly got hit. I helped." Hye-jin turned then, porcelain face unreadable. "Did the police come?" "Not needed. I took her to hospital. She'll be discharged tomorrow." He loosened his tie, the cut on Amara's arm flashing in his memory. "I told her I'd check in." A pause stretched, brief but heavy. Hye-jin crossed to the credenza, poured tea into 2 cups, and handed him one with practiced grace. "That was thoughtful," she said, her smile faint but exact. "You've always liked rescuing lost creatures." "Creatures?" Jinwoo chuckled softly. "She's a person." A pink shadow touched her cheeks. "You know what I mean." They sat at opposite ends of the sofa, space wide enough for another life between them. The tea was fragrant, nearly sweet. Jinwoo stared into the cup and searched for smaller words than the truth. "I recognize something," he said at last. Her brow arched. "Recognized? When I was a boy, we had a nanny, only for a few months. African. She cooked peanuts, smoky rice, fried plantains. She used to say, 'Food is a story you can eat.'" A smile ghosted across his face. "She caught me sneaking onions into her pot once, handed me a spoon, and told me if I insisted on interfering, I should interfere properly." Hyejin's posture softened a fraction. "You've told me pieces of that. The kitchen rebellions." "I was a menace," he admitted, "but she was the reason I started cooking." Her gaze slid briefly to the immaculate marble island behind him. "The sous vide machine glaring at me makes more sense now." "It only glares when you unplug it." He smiled and she almost returned it. Almost. Silence pressed in again, this time shaped like the absence of children. They'd been married nearly 2 years, long enough for friends to ask softly, for magazines to speculate not so softly. Hyejin's chin lifted a notch higher whenever the subject floated near. "The woman," she asked carefully. "Who is she?" "Her name's Amara, Nigerian. She's had a hard time, lost her job, no family here. Proud, though. She didn't want to go to the hospital because she couldn't pay." Hyejin studied her tea. "Pride is expensive. So are hospitals." "She reminded me of Ioma," Jinwoo said lightly. "She'd have approved." "She would," Hyejin agreed, her voice tight at the edges. "Your mother collected people who didn't belong. She loved that kind of story." "Stories are worth keeping," he said. His smile faltered when he saw hers didn't change. Dinner was served in the long oak dining room, a setting that looked more gallery than home. French-trained chefs had arranged delicate plates, flavors polished smooth. Jinwoo tasted politely but sighed inwardly, missing something unnamed. Hyejin noticed, as she always did. "Your face," she teased gently. "You're drafting a memo to the chef." "Only a friendly one," he said. "The food's perfect. It just doesn't wink. Doesn't tell a joke." Her mouth quirked. "Food is supposed to be funny?" "Just a little." He pinched the air. "The kind that makes you think of your grandmother." "My grandmother would faint at the butterbill." They both laughed softly, grateful for any reason. Later, restless, Jinwoo wandered to the kitchen. He opened the spice drawer, the jars lined like soldiers. From the back, he drew out smoked paprika from an expat market, inhaled, and remembered laughter on a kitchen stool. He set rice to toast in oil, added garlic and paprika until the air hummed. When Hyejin appeared, dressed for tomorrow's lunch with friends, she paused at the door. "At this hour?" "Taste." He offered a spoon. She tried it, blinked. "It's warm, like a hand around the middle." "Exactly," he said, absurd relief in his chest. She set the spoon down. "Check on her tomorrow," she said. "Do it quietly." "I will," he promised. They switched off lights, shades drawn against the city. But Seoul's neon still bled through the seams, restless as breath. Jinwoo lay awake listening to it, the echo of Amara's brief laugh looping in his mind. Somewhere across the river, a grainy clip of him guiding a woman through hospital doors had already found its way online, waiting for captions. Tomorrow he would keep his word. The morning air in Seoul carried a sharp edge, the kind that cleared the streets of their nighttime haze. Jinwoo stepped out of the mansion elevator in a fitted navy jacket, hair still damp from the shower, and for once dismissed the waiting chauffeur. He wanted no limousine today, no layers of glass between him and the choice he had made. Instead, he pulled the cover off his red Ferrari parked in the lower garage. A car too loud, too personal, and too symbolic for business. The engine purred awake, low and restless, as he guided it through Gangnam's arteries toward the hospital. Traffic thinned at the sound of the car, but his mind was louder. Flashes of Amara's laughter in the hospital bed, her insistence that she needed no charity. Her spine straight even when her blouse was torn. When he entered the ward, nurses glanced up quickly, recognition, curiosity, but moved aside as his surname did its work. He found her propped on the bed, scarf adjusted neatly, folding the hospital gown into precise squares as if she were returning it to a shop shelf. "You came back," she said softly. Surprise threaded through the words. "I told you I would," Jinwoo replied, setting a paper bag of fruit on the table. Apples, bananas, and orange glowing like sunrise. "And I don't like breaking promises." Her eyes flickered to the fruit, then away. "I don't want gifts." He smiled faintly. "Then consider it repayment for nearly giving me a heart attack last night." That drew a reluctant curl at the edge of her lips. The doctor appeared briefly, reporting that she was stable, just bruises, cuts, and fatigue from missed meals. With a bow, he left them in silence. Amara shifted, tugging at her sleeves. "I was a caregiver," she began, voice low as though confessing. "I came here 2 years ago. My employer was kind until the accusations came. Fraud, his family vanished, and I was left with nothing. No pay, no home. I tried sewing, cleaning, anything. But Seoul does not forgive foreigners without papers." She paused, gaze fixed on her hands. "I have slept under bridges, eaten only when I found kindness. I prayed, not for wealth, just strength. But prayer does not buy rice. Her honesty struck harder than any boardroom truth. Jinwoo felt the room tilt, not in pity but in the sheer weight of her resilience. "You still want to work?" he asked carefully. Her eyes lifted, dark and unwavering. "Work is dignity. Pity is a wound. I would rather sweep floors than take coins thrown at me." The words rang through him, clear as bells. He thought of his childhood nanny. That same thread ran through Amara. Survival turned into story, story turned into pride. He leaned forward. "Then come with me." She blinked. "To your house?" "To work," he clarified, his tone steady. "I have guest rooms, kitchens large enough to swallow this hospital twice over, and staff who could use another hand. It won't be charity. It will be an agreement. You give your work, I give you space to stand again." For the first time, uncertainty softened her posture. "Why me?" "Because you remind me of what matters," Jinwoo said simply. "Because you refuse to be small, even when the world tried to shrink you. And because," he paused, searching for words, "I think my house could use someone brave enough to cook food with a story." Amara's breath caught, a fragile laugh escaping her lips. "You are strange, Jinwoo Park." He grinned lightly. "So I've been told." The hospital released her with quiet efficiency, the bill already signed under his name. Outside, when the red Ferrari slid into view, her steps faltered. "That is your car?" she asked, eyes wide. "It doesn't bite," he said, opening the passenger door. "But it insists you sit in front. No hiding in the back." For a moment she stood frozen, then slowly lowered herself into the leather seat. The car hummed around her like a different world. The drive to Gangnam passed in near silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of the city. At a red light, Amara turned slightly, her profile etched against the morning sun. "You don't even know me," she murmured. Jinwoo's hands tightened on the wheel, but his voice was calm. "I know enough. You want dignity. That makes two of us." When the mansion gates opened, the guards blinked at the sight of their young master stepping out with a dark-skinned woman in worn clothes. Whispers began instantly, but Jinwoo ignored them. He led her inside, past marble and glass, past chandeliers that threw too much light. The guest wing smelled faintly of lilies. He stopped at the door, gesturing. "This will be your room. Earn it back with your work." Amara's eyes welled, but her voice was steady. "Thank you." The Park Mansion's kitchen was usually a museum, stainless steel polished like mirrors, marble counters stretching cold and untouched, appliances humming in silence. Chefs prepared Hyejin's elegant meals, then vanished, leaving no trace. But that night the space breathed differently. The hiss of oil, the crackle of peppers, the aroma of simmering tomatoes filled the air. Steam curled from a pot where Amara stirred with calm precision. Her scarf was tied neatly, sleeves rolled high, her movements measured by instinct more than recipes. She looked less like a guest and more like someone reclaiming her element, the flame, the spoon, the story. Jinwoo leaned against the counter, aprons slung over his black shirt, boyish despite his billion-one birthright. "You cook like you fought battles," he teased, handing her salt. She smirked faintly. "Sometimes a meal is the only weapon left." "That's poetic." "It's true," she said simply. "When there is only a little food, you make it into something that carries people through. Even one smile at the table can keep you alive." Her words sank deep. He wasn't looking at a maid. He was looking at a survivor. "Teach me," he said suddenly. She blinked. "Teach you?" "Yes, this, whatever this magic is." He gestured at the bubbling pot. "I've been pretending since I was a boy. Maybe it's time I learned for real." A laugh slipped out of her before she could stop it. "You are Samsung's heir, and you want to learn how to stir rice? What's the point of being heir to an empire," he grinned, "if you can't feed yourself properly?" With a shake of her head, she handed him the wooden spoon. He took it like an oath, and together they leaned over the pot, stirring in rhythm. From the corridor, a faint click of heels paused. Hyejin had returned early from her lunch with friends. Dressed in a pastel blouse and pleated skirt, pearls glinting at her ears, she froze at the threshold. She hadn't expected laughter, the kind she hadn't heard from Jinwoo in months. Hidden in the shadow of the doorway, she watched her husband bend close, tasting from the spoon Amara held. His eyes lit up, boyish and unguarded. Her chest tightened. She turned away before either could notice. Later that evening, the house staff whispered what she already suspected. The woman in the guest wing had been cooking in the mansion, filling it with spices and warmth, laughter spilling like it belonged there. At dinner, the change was unmistakable. Instead of French minimalism, bowls of Amara's stew steamed across the oak table. Jinwoo introduced it with unusual lightness. Tonight, we eat something with a story. Hyejin sat tall at the head, every line of her posture a crown. She lifted a spoon, tasted carefully. The flavor was bold, spicy, smoky, alive. It felt like an intrusion in porcelain. "It's different," she said at last, setting her spoon down with graceful precision. "Very bold." "Bold is good," Jinwoo replied, unaware of her jaw tightening. "Food should be brave." Her smile was thin. "So should marriages." The words hung in the air like smoke. Amara lowered her gaze, heat rising to her cheeks. She whispered something about clearing the kitchen and slipped away. Later, restless, Jinwoo knocked gently at her door. She opened, hair loosened, eyes tired. "You shouldn't call me sir here," he said softly. "Just Jinwoo." Her lips parted in surprise. Silence held them for a long moment. At the far end of the hall, Hyejin lingered in the shadows again. Her pulse hammered as she turned away, her face still calm, but her thoughts a storm. Tomorrow, she promised herself, this charade would end. Seoul's Saturday sky was clear and pitiless, a day made for shopping bags and cafe chatter. In Gangnam, Hyejin sat with her friends inside a glass-walled cafe, her white dress flawless, her hair curled in glossy waves. She smiled when the camera flashed, raised her coffee cup at the right angle, and let her friends' compliments wash over her like perfume. But beneath the polish, her stomach coiled. The talk had drifted, as it always did, to marriages. "Did you see the clip online?" one friend asked casually, sliding her phone across the table. A grainy video showed Jinwoo guiding a dark-skinned woman through hospital doors. "People are saying she's unusual company for him." Another leaned in. "I heard she's staying at your mansion. Staff gossip travels fast." Hyejin's grip on her cup tightened until the porcelain clicked. She smiled anyway, the kind that cost energy instead of giving it. People invent stories when they're bored. Her friends exchanged glances, curiosity hanging in the air. Hyejin was still smoothing her face back into calm when a red Ferrari caught her eye outside the cafe window. The car glinted like a taunt, parked across the busy street in front of Seoul's famous recipe store. The one food lovers treated like a temple. Her breath caught. The passenger door opened. Jinwoo stepped out in a sleek, black turtleneck and tailored blazer. And beside him, bags in hand, scarf neat, was Amara. They laughed at something small, something no one else would understand. For a frozen second, they looked like a couple. Heat rushed to Hyejin's chest. Her friends were already whispering, "Isn't that your husband?" The scraping of her chair cut them off. She rose, white heels clicking sharp against the tile, and strode out without a word. Across the street, Jinwoo tucked a bag into the Ferrari and gestured lightly to the passenger side. "It doesn't bite," he teased, and Amara smiled, sliding into the front seat. The door barely closed before it was wrenched open. Hyejin's hands shot in, fingers clamping around Amara's wrist. "Get out!" she hissed, her voice breaking into a shout before pride could leash it. Amara gasped, pulled from the car like a rag doll. The slap landed with a crack that froze the street. "You dare sit beside my husband as if you belong there?" Hyejin's voice rang, brittle with rage and despair. Phones lifted, flashes burst. A tourist whispered in English, "Is that Samsung's heir?" Jinwoo froze, then bolted around the car. Hyejin, stop! His voice was low, desperate, but the moment was already immortalized. Amara staggered back, hand pressed to her cheek. Humiliation flared hotter than the sting. She felt the stares, the cameras, the whispers piercing her like needles. Tears threatened, but she swallowed them. Without a word, she turned and ran, into the swarm of Seoul's traffic, into anonymity. She didn't stop until neon blurred and headlights smeared like tears. At a bus stop, she climbed aboard, collapsed into the back row, and hid her face against the window. Back on the street, chaos bloomed. Clips of the slap were uploaded before Jinwoo could even reach his wife. Hashtags lit up within minutes. #Samsung hair, #African maid, #public slap. Wife attacks, maid in broad daylight. By evening, the video had circled the globe. On news broadcasts, the slap replayed in slow motion, dissected frame by frame. At the mansion, Hyejin stormed inside first, her perfect dress now stiff with sweat. Jinwoo followed, fury sharp in his voice. "Do you realize what you've done?" "I protected my dignity," she snapped. "You parade her through the city like she belongs at your side. She cooked for me. She helped me, that's all. And you humiliated her in front of the world." Her laugh cracked. "World? It's your world, Jinwoo. I'm just a woman the press calls too old, too barren, too lucky to have you. And then you bring her, youth, curves, mystery, into my house, into your car? Tell me why I should sit quietly while you erase me." Jinwoo's face darkened, voice breaking. "No one asked you to slap her in the street." Her hands trembled, pride holding back tears. "Then maybe you should have asked me to stay blind." She turned away, heels echoing like final words down the corridor. And in a bus rattling across Seoul, Amara pressed her cheek to the glass, the mark of a hand burning hotter than the stairs. The city already knew her name. The bus rattled through Seoul's midnight arteries, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. Amara sat in the back row, forehead pressed to the window. Her cheek burned where Hyejin's hand had struck, but worse was the echo, the gasps, the stares, the screens. Every reflection in the glass felt like a stranger recording her shame. She whispered into the hum of the engine, a prayer that sounded more like surrender. "Lord, don't let me be the reason they destroy each other." When the bus groaned to a stop near the mansion gates, she stepped down quietly. The guards shifted uncomfortably, bowing without meeting her eyes. Inside, the chandeliers glowed too brightly, like interrogators. Every polished wall seemed to ask what she was doing here. Upstairs, the storm had already broken. Jinwoo stood in his study, sleeves rumpled, fists braced against the desk. On his tablet, stock charts bled red. Samsung's value was plunging, billions lost in hours. The news ticker looped the clip again and again. Samsung heir's wife slaps African maid in public. Social feeds replayed the sound of it, gifs freezing Amara's flinch into a weapon. Across the room, Hyejin paced like a caged animal. Her elegant white dress was crumpled. Mascara streaked into smoky shadows under her eyes. "They've made me a villain," she spat. "The whole world thinks I'm cruel because you paraded her through the city like a prize." "You hit her," Jinwoo said flatly. His voice was quiet, but the kind of quiet that snapped bone. "On camera, in public. There's no undoing that." "She was in your car." Hyejin's voice cracked, sharp with desperation. "Beside you, smiling like she belonged there. Do you know what that looks like? To me? To them?" She jabbed a finger at the glowing headlines. "It looks like kindness," he shot back, steel in his words. "It looks like a man helping someone who had nothing. But you," he slammed his palm on the desk, "you turned it into cruelty." Hyejin flinched, then straightened, her pride wrapping tighter. "Cruelty? I am your wife. Every gaze measures me, my age, my womb, my worth. And then she appears, young, curvy, exotic, while I am left to be the ghost in my own marriage. Do you not see how easy it is for the world to prefer her?" Jinwoo's jaw locked, a hesitation flickering in his eyes. He had never thought of it that way, but the moment of silence betrayed him. Hyejin laughed bitterly, a sound too sharp to be human. Even you can't deny it now. In the guest wing, Amara sat on the edge of her bed, hearing the muffled argument carry through glass and wood. Her hands trembled as she folded her few belongings into a bag. Pride and pain knotted in her chest, but dignity demanded choice. Better I leave now than be the wedge that splits their lives apart. She zipped the bag shut and set it by the door. Down the hall, Jinwoo stared at the woman he had married, seeing not just anger, but the raw wound beneath it, the fear of being erased. His voice cracked under the weight of it. Hyejin, no one is replacing you, but if you can't see the difference between compassion and betrayal, then what are we even protecting? Her reply was a whisper, brittle as glass. Our survival, or what's left of it. The mansion fell silent, the kind of silence that hurt the ears. And outside, Seoul's skyline blinked with questions. Headlines sharpened, investors panicked, and the Park family name, long synonymous with stability, now trembled on the edge of scandal. Seoul did not wake to birdsong, it woke to scandal. Screens in taxis, cafes, and living rooms all replayed the same grainy clip. Hyejin Park yanking a dark-skinned woman from a red Ferrari, the slap ringing across Gangnam. Loops slowed the moment, froze Amara's flinch into endless gifs, hashtags scrolling faster than traffic. Samsung Air, African Maid, public slap, shame of Gangnam. By mid-morning, Samsung's shares plunged again, billions wiped from the market. Anchors speculated whether the young heir's marriage and judgment were collapsing. Editorials dissected Hyejin's insecurity, Amara's humiliation, and Jinwoo's silence. Inside the mansion, silence was no less brutal. Amara sat in her guest room, the faint mark of Hyejin's hand still on her cheek. She had prayed for strength, not scandal, yet here she was, the spark in someone else's fire. She tied her scarf once more, checked the room she had never claimed, and whispered, Lord, let me leave with dignity, if not peace. She placed the bag by the door. Dawn would be her escape. Down the hall, Jinwoo sat slumped on the edge of his bed. His shirt was rumpled, hair mussed from running his hands through it all night. His tablet glowed with bleeding red charts. His phone buzzed with unanswered calls from board directors, uncles, and reporters. None of it pierced him as much as the image replaying in his head. Amara's eyes, hurt, proud, refusing to break. Across the room, Hyejin stood before the mirror, fastening pearl earrings with trembling hands. Her new dress was perfect armor, her hair flawless, her lips painted to disguise the cracks. We will face this together, she said tightly. Say nothing. Show unity. They can't divide us if we don't let them. Jinwoo lifted his gaze. For the first time, he saw the fracture between them, not as a line but a canyon. Protect her pride and silence the scandal, or defend Amara's dignity and risk the empire. Hyejin, he said, voice low, unity is not silence. Unity is truth. Her hands stilled. For a moment she looked at him, truly looked, as though searching for the boy she had married. But whatever she found only deepened the fear in her eyes. You can't save us both, she whispered. The words struck deeper than the slap. Amara stepped quietly into the hall, bag in hand. Her footsteps barely stirred the marble, yet in the silence they sounded like thunder. She passed the family portraits, the chandeliers, the glass walls that made everything feel exposed. At the threshold she looked back once. The mansion glowed too brightly, as if desperate to hide its cracks. She bowed her head, then pushed the door open to meet the waiting dawn. Outside, the city was already alive with questions. And inside, Jinwoo sat with his wife, the weight of his choice pressing down. Shield Hyejin's pride at all costs, or defend Amara even if it shattered everything. The house held its breath. The world waited. By sunrise, the video had circled the globe. News anchors dissected it, tabloids mocked it, and investors panicked. In boardrooms from Seoul to New York, Samsung's future was whispered about in tones usually reserved for war. Amara walked away from the mansion gates, her bag light but her heart heavier than stone. Every step carried a vow. She would not be the ruin of a family, no matter what the world thought of her. Inside, Jinwoo sat between two silences, the cold distance of his wife and the echo of a woman who had chosen to leave quietly. His phone buzzed with another call, this one from his father's office. He didn't answer. For the first time, the heir of Samsung realized his life was no longer his own. His choices had slipped from private halls into the glare of public judgment. And somewhere behind glowing screens, the world leaned forward. Would he defend his wife's pride or risk everything to stand for the truth of what had happened? The answer would not wait long. To be continued.